It isn't hard to think in terms of good and bad, labeling behavior as good behavior or bad behavior. The problem with morality or ethics, use the word you prefer, is that these types of behavior are influenced by emotions and impulsions we haven't chosen. We feel compelled to do certain stuff, or we feel bad when we act in other ways, not because we choose to do so, not because we are fundamentally a better person than someone else, but just because that's what comes out from the mix of genetic influences and acquired behavioral influences. And maybe because our actions in part are responsible for constructing our identity, especially a social identity, it is easy probably to cling to this idea. So the idea that what we do and our behaviors are in fact the right way of doing things, and that that is the good way of being a human being and living this world. We could probably also give some social reasonings for this. As a group of people, we like stability, we like knowing how things will act. And so creating a blueprint for how people in general should act, of what is considered good behavior and bad behavior, is useful for the inner workings of a society that is basically a group of people living together. But at least for me, if you take a step back and analyze your behavior, you'll soon realize that there isn't a specific reason why you act that way. There are a myriad of uncontrollable reasonings for why you act in the way you act, even though you may try to personify and derive an identity from your behavior. At the end of the day, you act in a way, and maybe for laziness, inattentiveness, you start to justify your behavior and maybe involuntarily want that other people act that way. Obviously, there are certain activities that are, quotes, generally bad. For example, killing one another. Generally speaking, someone doesn't like to be killed by another human being. But in this case, with this analysis, I'm more referring to our everyday behavior and how in our everyday life we may involuntarily judge other people when they act in a certain way, and with known and unknown behavior, with verbal and non-verbal communication, we may direction people in our lives or strangers to act in specific ways and influence our surroundings, molding it in a way that's more similar to what we expect things to be like and behavior to be like. That's why I've always had a hard time when I see people that want to impose their beliefs and impose their internal compass that they use to act and to behave in the world to other people. Because to me, it's so obvious that you don't control what are your beliefs, or better, you don't control your internal logic as you may think. You just find yourself, when you're a little bit more conscious, that you have a way of thinking and therefore of behaving. And although that may seem so personal and it identifies yourself, you are your thoughts and you are your reasonings and the logic you use to reason yourself in the world. There's also that other part of you that sees how uncontrollable and how little we did to actually obtain what we have, to create and win this logic we now have, and that we use to analyze and to infer how we should behave, how other people will behave, and to live basically as an organism in this world. Obviously, sometimes in our day-to-day life, we may not think about this and we may forget it for a while. It is normal to stubbornly hold a position or a point of view, or think that people should act how we think people should act. The idea that the world should behave like you think. But when you're at home and have a little bit of time for yourself, at least for me, it's easy to see how not futile, because that's all we have and our behavior, it is what we have, but how bold and cruel it can be to impose your logic to other people. And it's hard because it's something that you also do. It's not just something that other people do. That would be way too easy. But it's probably something you've done in the past and certainly will do in the future. And maybe that's why herd mentality can seem so cruel, because when you're by yourself, it's easier sometimes to reflect upon these things, even in the moment, or at least very close to the moment, so seconds or minutes after you've done or said something. But when you're surrounded with other people, it's hard to access this more detached and cold and neutral state of mind and analyze and critique what you're doing. It is so easy to get carried on and to follow the flow around you.